I used to be able to do it. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And you know, everything's delayed, and I hate not being on time. I mean, who do I think I am, Madonna? So anyway, 15 minutes late. This is the live show for this, December 11th, 2008, 19, 2008. 2019. I'm so flustered right now. I'm so pissed off. Let's see who's in here. And let's see who else we got in here. Heather, where's Ed? This is where I am. Jasmine. Yes, I was very ticked off. Who else is in here? Emily. And who else? Okay. So it is time. Let's just get started. Since you saw me last, I flew to Pennsylvania on Monday, and my dad and I drove back yesterday. Actually, I did all the driving, truth be known. Took us 16 hours and 44 minutes. That's total time. That's not just driving time. That includes gas stops, bathroom stops, whatever. Total of 16 hours and 44 minutes from Renfrew, Pennsylvania to Clearwater Beach, Florida. First half of the drive was all rain, and the second half of the drive was beautiful. It's weird how that worked. But, so my dad is here. He's over that direction. And he'll be here probably through February, which, you know, which probably is going to feel like August by the time it gets here. But, I'm doing good. Just, it's good to be back. Went up to Pennsylvania very quickly. Wasn't too cold there. Wasn't too bad. It was rainy and stuff. It was a little ugly. Let's see what we have going on here. Laura. Laura has a question. Kind of random. If the internet and all means of social media podcasts suddenly disappeared forever, would you continue working in missing persons, or is there any other career paths that interest you? You know, Laura, that's a very, very hypothetical question. I would certainly continue in missing persons cases. You just wouldn't be able to do it like we do right now. Man, my nose is itchy for some allergies. I think that I would be able to continue it. Just have to maybe go do a little more on location type of thing. Just hard to say, but I think absolutely. I mean, just because if that would happen, I don't know. I mean, you know, if social media and podcasts went away, then there must really be something going on in the world, like a nuclear war or something. Which, if that's the case, then maybe I have bigger problems on my hands. But yeah, of course, I would definitely continue working on this. Absolutely. Good question. No fishing. He's working. Thank you. Said, how are you irritated right now? Heather, I was very irritated. Okay, you're just all in my prayers. Last time I offer my condolences. Okay, let me, Joyce says my hair is rad. Joyce, behave yourself. Thank you. Hello, Valerie and Tammy and Mark number one. All right, now I'm getting down here. Orlando, Angela, Mandy. Okay. What else do I want to talk about? Let's get right into this. So like I said, Dad is here, and the poll from the Tammy, Arthur, and Chad Peters disappearance. We do a poll if you're maybe new to what we do at Unfound. The Saturday morning after the episode comes out, we post a poll just to get an idea of what the listeners are thinking after the episode comes out and they've listened to it. And the number one choice, I asked, are Tammy and Chad's disappearances connected to a cartel? The overwhelming choice is maybe. I put yes, I put no, I put maybe. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised that maybe was the number one answer. But as I've written on the Patreon blog, if you are not a Patreon supporter, please become one at patreon.com/ Unfound Podcast to be able to read. You can make a contribution there month to month and be able to read all of the blogs that I write there on all the cases. But in the blog that I wrote for Tammy and Chad's disappearance, I said how, and we also talked about this in the think tank, is that if you believe that the call that Tammy made to Tom about Chad getting abducted by a cartel, then it's very easy to understand what happened to them. If you don't believe her phone call, then it's harder to understand what happened. But the problem is that I think a majority of people don't believe the phone call. It seems like a little bit of a paradox there for some reason, and I now every time it comes out of my mouth, I don't think that I'm explaining it very well. But I guess what I'm saying is choosing to not believe the phone call makes it harder for us to determine what happened. Is essentially what I'm saying. Laura says, "Good to hear. Thanks for your answer. I just wondered because you are a man with many talents." Well, Laura, that's very kind. I do a lot. I don't know how talented I am at everything that I do, but I do a lot. But I appreciate that. Mandy says, "Love the hair. Love that my dad is here." Yeah, he's over there. He was watching All in the Family when I came in here. Full Metal likes the long hair. Thank you. Well, it's gonna keep growing. I'm not gonna be walking in front of a pair of scissors for a while. So get used to this. So I can understand why a large majority of the people, probably 70% of the people, picked that. They're just not sure if a cartel had anything to do with it or not. I'm open to the possibilities. Even to the point of thinking maybe they're still alive and did run off. I think there are a lot of different possibilities in this, but just so you know, I think it was Kathy. I know you're in here tonight. I think it was Kathy that made the very insightful point that she believes this disappearance and everything actually started right at the time that Tammy and Chad moved to Texas. She made a very good point, and it was something that I overlooked. And Kathy, you're very smart for pointing it out. They kind of came to the conclusion that Tammy and Chad did not move away from Ohio to get away from the problems there. They actually moved to Texas to start doing something in Mexico. I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that. So I wanted to add that. So, Kathy, I know you're in here tonight. I thought that was a very interesting point on your part. So, congratulations on that. Let me answer another question. I really don't have a ton of stuff tonight. Could not prepare like I usually do, given that Monday and Tuesday I got no unfound work done. Zero. And that's very unusual, as you would expect. And so I had to start on Friday's episode today. Completed it, and I'll be talking about that at the end of the program, as I usually do. But what made things difficult this week, and maybe I should answer that question first. Amanda, who I know is in here tonight, asked me if people asked for help, then never responded. They contacted myself, contacted Emily, said they want to get the word out there about their missing loved one, and then we start contacting them, and then they disappear. Amanda, and to the rest of you, that happens more than you'd realize. First time, Kathy says first time. There's Kathy from the think tank. I knew you were in here, Kathy. Kathy, first time doing live chat. Have been here every week since February. Well, Kathy, thank you for getting involved in the YouTube live show and not just the think tank. Thank you. Amanda, have people asked for help that never responded? Amanda, that happens in everybody should know, Amanda, you gave me a long paragraph that I'm not going to read all of it, Amanda, but that was the general gist of the long paragraph, something that Amanda's going through right now. Amanda, it's common. As Emily, who is in here tonight, hello, Emily. As Emily is saying, I've had people say they are interested and then don't answer. Has happened several times. I don't think the public or the listeners realize how much that happens. And where I was going just a minute ago, is that this week was pretty planned out of what was supposed to be going on. However, I had an interview scheduled for Sunday at 1 o'clock, and the person stood me up and has not responded to myself nor Emily since then. After Emily had talked to her a couple times, I talked to her a couple times. She agreed on Sunday that we would do the interview and then would not take my calls and will not respond to anybody, myself. It happens more than you realize. Why does it happen? I'm going to guess that every situation is different. I think that part of it is that people think they're ready to talk about the disappearance, and then when they figure out what we're going to be talking about and the details of it, they start to suffer anxiety. A lot of bad memories start to come back, and they don't think that they can get through it, and so they don't. All right, and I have to admit, very, very rarely are the people as courteous enough to let me know, you know what, I wanted to do it, but now I'm not going to do it. It's happened, but not, maybe 10% of the time. The other 90%, it's usually myself or Emily getting stood up, making arrangements to talk to people. They don't answer the phone. They don't call back. You know, the other, I think, issue that happens is that you have to remember, I think that these, how do I put this the right way? We talk a lot about drugs on Unfound, okay, and addictions. What Emily and I have surely discovered is those addictions are just not limited to the people who disappeared. Okay? You find out that those addictions run through the entire family, including the person who is going to be doing the interview for the program, and many people get through it. And I would never name any names of those people who I suspect probably had things going on just like their loved ones did. I would never do that. But they get through it, and some other addicts who have been on the program, they decide they're not going to do it, and they just stand us up. Emily and I have certainly learned that. And it's sad and everything, but I'm just going to be blunt. They do waste our time. Okay, they do. If there is one thing about Ed, I know very, very few of you, Joyce I know is in here, Heather's in here, very, very few of you have met me in person. So maybe you didn't get the chance to look me in the eye and, body language and everything else. One of the main things in my life is I don't like people who waste my time. All right, because everything that I do, I put the best foot forward. Everything that I do. All right, if I don't think that I can put my best foot forward, I don't do it. And so it ticks me off when people say they're going to do things and don't, and they're wasting my time and everything. Jasmine says, "Sorry that happens. That must suck. It does suck. It does." Because then I don't like to miss Fridays. I don't. I take it personally. We work hard here to provide content every week. And I know that there are podcasts that don't mind missing a week. I know that Marissa, of course, at The Vanish, does a similar program. Of course, she is a mother. I think she had a newborn, was it last year? And I think she already has another child. She has a lot more things going on than I do. So I think she takes off at least 1 week a month. Whatever she wants to do, fine with me. But, over here, we like to put new stuff out every week. And we work hard to do that. And when that doesn't totally happen, I do get ticked off. But if you ever wonder why that happens, it's not because of us. It's not. It's not because of Emily. It's not because of myself. It's not because of Cherie or Carrie or Heather or Eric or anybody else. It's usually because the person we are going to talk to stood us up. So, Amanda, it does happen. And I can tell you it's almost unpredictable whether it's going to happen or not. I've had great conversations with people, and then I go to call them for the interview. They don't pick up nothing. In fact, I will tell you of a interview that I was supposed to do at the beginning of October. Really good, intricate, complicated case. Talked to the missing man's sister a couple times, had great conversations. I called her on the day for the interview. She hasn't picked up. She hasn't even been on Facebook since that time. I don't know. Maybe she died. Maybe she had a heart attack. Maybe I don't know. I've tried calling several times. No response. And we had excellent conversations. I don't know. I don't know. So that's what happened on Sunday. And I think I probably could have put another episode together for a new Disappearance. But because I couldn't work on Monday or Tuesday, that was totally not possible. And so we're making up for it with something that I think is still, of course, very important. That's current, that's going on right now. And it's probably going to be forecasting something I'm going to be doing for the year 2020. I'm just looking. Mandy says, I want you to know that you are the only podcast I pay anything for. Mandy, that's very kind. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. You're welcome, Amanda. So if those things are happening to you, Amanda, you're not alone. You're not alone. It's not you. It's not you. And what I try to remember, as much as I get ticked off about this stuff, and I realize that it's not personal. I don't think they're doing it because it's me or Emily. They're doing it probably because they're flaky in everything they do in their life. Probably. And I have compassion for them. I'm talking about mothers who've bailed out, sisters, brothers who've bailed out, all different types of family members who have bailed out. And I know that they are hurting inside and everything else. But we put our best foot forward. We are here to help. And I think that entitles us for a little bit of honesty and keeping your word. I think. All right, Sherry, thank you for handling the Tom Brown question. Mark says, I hope the old thing stinks about Tom Brown. Yeah. Kathy says, I think it's so inconsiderate to not keep appointments or not explain why. Hey, Kathy, I know. Thank you, Mark. Sheree says she also has a whole network supporting her financially. Are you talking about Marissa, Sheree? I guess you are. Carrie says, we all work super hard in getting episodes. Frustrating to get ignored. Yep, I know. How about the student doctor? I don't know anything about that, Mark. Emily is outstanding. I agree with that. Yes, Emily is outstanding. Kathy, we're fortunate to have all assistants on the team. Kathy, I'm fortunate to have any assistants. Given my penchant for working alone and everything, that I have these fine women and one guy who have become assistants of mine and everything else, is I feel very fortunate because in my life I do have a reputation for only wanting to work alone, and I really do work alone. I mean, I work here at home. As I've said, I've only ever met Heather in person when I went to Amarillo, Texas, and Canadian. But I do have a reputation. I have oftentimes having a hard time playing with others. So to be able to say that I have those many people who have volunteered their time to do everything that they've done is certainly special. Certainly, certainly. Okay, let's move on to. I got a question. Must have been maybe a week and a half ago, something like that. If I'm going to be doing any in memoriam episodes, now that, for example, Devin Bond's remains have been found. If you will remember, going back to a year ago, I did an in memoriam for Zoe Campos case because she, of course, her remains were found and somebody, Carlos Rodriguez, was taken into custody for murdering her. And some people, even going back to Tom Brown's remains, you haven't done an in memoriam for that. Here's the reason I haven't done one for Tom. Here's the reason I haven't done one for Devin. Maybe if you even want to bring up Laura Bible, Ashley Freeman, being that there's a guy who's now in custody. The only time I'm going to do an in memoriam is if the case is finally closed. Okay? For example, Tom Brown's case, it's not closed. That's still an open investigation. I know what they said at the meeting in August, it might be a suicide and everything else, but there has been no official cause of death, just theories. And as long as that's the case, we're not going to close the case by doing an in memoriam for Thomas. Same way with Devin Bond. I think that there's a feeling out there that he committed suicide, but I've not seen anything official. Now, if it does come out to be official that that's what he did, and his mother and everybody else agrees with it, then we will do that. But until I actually see that, read that, and it's official, then it may. I mean, we do an in memoriam, and then they say, well, no, he was murdered. We're only going to do in memoriams if the case is totally closed. So I guess you could flip it on the other way. Teresa Butler, Cricket, that's the guy's nickname. He is in custody now for murdering her, but her remains have not been found. When her remains are found, we will do an in memoriam for her. Same way with Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. One of those guys, of course, the other two are dead. The one guy is in custody for all of their deaths, Mr. and Mrs. Freeman and the girls, but Laura and Ashley haven't been found yet. When they are, we will do that episode. That is how I'm going to handle that. So I think what I'm saying is that of all the cases that Unfound is covered, only one has been totally wrapped up. Even if you look at like Tiffany Johnson's case, where her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend has been convicted of her death, she's not been found. When her remains are found, we will do an in memoriam. Angie Arnell, her husband went to jail for those years. Her remains have not been found. Can't do one for that either. So I'm going to limit those special kinds of episodes for when those cases are finally in the books. And only one of those is totally in the books right now, and that is Zoe Campos's case. So if you were wondering, that is the criteria that I'm using to do those special episodes. And like I said, Zoe Campos's, I think I did that about a year ago. Let's go on to another question. What's Michelle say now, Ed? Of course you have people who want to help. Unfound is awesome. Oh, you're too kind, Michelle. Thank you. Nicole asked me, have I ever traveled outside of the United States? I have. I would not say that I'm a traveler, though. I flew on Monday. I love hanging out at the airport. I got there. My brother Brian dropped me off very early. I don't mind sitting there on my computer, people watching, getting some stuff done. Can't get a lot done because I can't call anybody or anything. Because there's too many people around, no privacy. And, you know, the standard that I use for everyone that I talk to regarding Unfound is nobody is ever in the room when I'm doing Unfound business because most of it is usually confidential. So it's not like I can sit there as if I were talking to one of my friends or my dad in an airport. I don't do that for Unfound calls. That's just not right. Um, but I do love hanging out at the airport. I don't like flying. I used to have a fear of flying. I don't have it now. I just don't like being cooped up like that. And that was only for 2 hours from Florida to Pennsylvania. I hate it. I just hate it. I just hate being. You know, I suppose if I could fly privately, a private jet, maybe I'll hit Powerball or something, then that would be pretty cool. But I love to drive, as was shown yesterday, being able to drive from Pennsylvania to Florida. I love driving. It's very easy for me. Does not stress me out. I can get in a car and just go, 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 go for hours. No problem. But we talk about travel, like going to other countries and things that requires flying, and I just don't like being cooped up like that. But yes, I have traveled outside the country, Nicole. I don't know if you're watching now or you'll watch later. I've been to Canada several times over my life, maybe over 30 times. Um, I've been to, where else have I been? I've been on some cruises. So, of course, when you go on a cruise, you're going to be going to some interesting places. I've been to Jamaica. I've been to Grand Cayman. I've been to Belize. I have been to Mexico one time to one of those all-inclusive resorts, but then on a cruise, also stopped in Mexico. When I was back in 1996, if you're wondering how old I am and you don't know, I'm 49 years old. Back in 1996, August of 96, myself and my girlfriend at the time, we went to the island of St. Martin like 4 days. Like we left on a Friday morning and came back like a Monday night. That would have been August of 1996. I was just a spring chicken. I had just turned 26. That's where I have a very funny story. I don't know, maybe I can. I'm not going to tell the story here, but I actually got stuck on a deserted. This is a true story. I got stuck on a deserted island with a beautiful woman. That's a true story. I wish I could tell you the whole story, but it's not friendly for kids. Let's just put it that way. But I did get stuck on a deserted island with a beautiful woman on that trip. It was actually a little scary. Where else have I been? That's really about it. I think so. That's about it. Um, never been to Europe. You have to fly and everything. Just not into it. Just not into it. So, but the places I've gone have been fine, but I'm a little bit of a homebody. I'm not saying I'm boring, but these people say, "Well, I love to travel and everything else." Um, I don't know. I suppose I could be coaxed into it with the right person, but independently, myself making those choices, that would not be the choice that I would make for my time to travel, like to get in an airplane and fly 12 hours somewhere and be there for a week and then fly 12 hours back. Just, I don't know. But we'll just have to see. Maybe I'll change. Let's move on to, so that I hope that answers your question, Nicole. Um, Kathy says, I hate flying, heights, and claustrophobia. Would rather drive. Jasmine says, same here. I'm a total homebody. Yeah. Shirts. Maybe you've seen that we got some shirts out to a lot of the most recent guests. I know Warren Guy posted a picture with him and his. Kristen Thielen, who is now Kristen Dennis because she got married. Brandy Myers' sister, she got her shirt. She took a photo in it, and several others. If you're wondering if you'd like to have one, the from a particular case that is important to you, you can go to unfound-podcast.myshopify.com if you're interested in that type of thing. So if you've seen those shirts, I have to tell you, they're very high quality. I've had a few of them for a few years now. They get washed. I'm, of course, wearing one right now. They get washed fairly often. They don't fade. They don't shrink. They don't start fraying or anything. They are very, very good quality. Really, they really are. And the artwork and everything, I think, is very good. Especially considering I designed these shirts myself. I designed the pictures on the back myself. Send the files to them. They get made. It comes out really well. So unfound-podcast.myshopify.com if you are interested in having an Unfound shirt. We've got lots of them there now. Maybe something else. We talk about the think tank, and it plays on Sunday nights. That's part of being on Patreon. If you are contributing at the $12 a month level or above, you get to be part of the think tank. Well, you should know, and I had moved the think tank started on YouTube as a private show. And then we were having some problems between it and Patreon, so we moved it to Facebook. And it's been good there. The problem is that some people who have contributed at that $12 level or above, they don't have Facebook accounts. And I don't want anybody to feel like they need to get into social media, something they normally wouldn't do, just to be into the think tank. And that would be wrong on my part for me to expect them to do that. Whereas on YouTube, as you know, if you're watching tonight, you don't have to have an account, you don't have to have a channel, nothing. You can just get in here, follow the link, and you can just watch on your phone at home, wherever you are. And so come 2020, the first Sunday in 2020, we will be going back to YouTube for the think tank program. The think tank gathering, I guess I should call it. Now, that does not mean that it's still open to everybody. It's still a very, very restricted audience for that. And there are ways that we do that. Hidden links and everything, unlisted videos for those people. It's not like here where everybody can just get on and watch and everything. It's not like that. But if you'd like to take part in the think tank, Kathy will tell you, Cherie will tell you, Heather will tell you, Carrie will tell you. It's a great way to offer your insights in a very, very open forum where your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions eventually get brought back to the guest for that episode. To my knowledge, we are the only program that does something like that, where we take what the listeners say and they believe, and we take it right to the guest. The listeners, if they're in the think tank, they know that they are having a direct effect on the case possibly getting solved, because the guest is eventually hearing what these listeners think and feel. So if that sounds something that interests you, please go to Patreon and sign up at the $12 a month or above level. Kim says, you should really visit South Africa. We have the most beautiful places to visit. I'm in a rural area, which is a World Heritage Site where you have crocs and hippos trotting around at will. I've seen a lot about South Africa, Kim. That's way down there. I gotta tell you. It's way, I look at there, South Africa to me looks like it's on the moon. And even, and I'm in Florida, which, really is not that far away from Africa. Even though, funny enough, this is a really good trivia question. Oh my gosh. And I am a little tired. I didn't go to bed till like 3 last night, and I got up at 7:30 today. It's an interesting trivia question. What state is closest to Africa? It's not Florida. Believe it or not, it's Maine. Maine is the closest state to Africa, not Florida. But Kim, I don't doubt you at all regarding South Africa, but I just don't. No offense to you, of course. Just don't think I'm probably going to get there in this lifetime. Um, Maybe that'll change. But thank you for the opinion on that, though, and thank you for tuning in from South Africa. I'm wondering what time it is. It must be what? Is it like 10 till 2 in the morning or 10 till 3, Kim? You'll have to tell me what time it is there. Thank you, Kathy, for loving the think tank. Let's take another question, and then I want to talk about this interesting news piece. Jill, who seems to get a question in every week, and I love that. Kim says, just look past the crime. Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, Kim, but since you said that, I have seen those stories. I've seen them. Kim says it's 10 till 5, so you are 7 hours ahead of... Okay. Well, thank you for staying up all night, Kim. I appreciate that. Jill asked me, what percentage of cases, I guess that, or, maybe in the general population of missing persons cases, involve, what cases involve corruption? And I'm guessing Jill means that, police corruption, something like that. I continue to trot out the stat that shows that 10% of Unfound's cases have probably involved a crooked police officer of some type. Whether it is, just a regular police officer on the beat or actual detective on the case, if you can believe it, or, of course, everybody's going to obviously think of Tom Brown's case with sheriffs and deputies and, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. 10% is probably, Jill, if you're watching, I don't know if you're in here tonight, 10% of the cases involving corruption, that's probably a good number to start at. And it probably goes up from there if you want to start getting into, maybe there's a mayor out there who's trying to influence a case to going a certain direction, powers that be and everything. I suppose I could see in missing persons cases corruption in the, getting up to about 15%. I don't think I would be surprised by that. But you start getting up to 20-25%, that sounds a little outrageous to me, given what I know about the cases that Unfound is covered. But I could certainly see it getting up to 15%, because I know it's 10%. So getting, 50% more to 15% would not surprise me at all. So that's probably the number, the stat that I would give out, but I have no proof of that. I just have proof that of Unfound's cases, 10% have involved corruption of some type. Let's go to this. This is an amazing story, and it comes out of my former home state of Nevada. There's a guy whose name is Chris Long, and very ironically, he works for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And Washoe County where is that? Nye County is where Pahrump is. Clark County is where Las Vegas is. Washoe County, you'd think that I lived there for 13 years, I'd know that. But is that up maybe near Reno? But he works for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And Chris Long suffers from a form of leukemia. And because of that, at some point, I don't know how recently this happened, but at some point, he got a bone marrow transplant from a person from Germany. How that was all matched up and how that German's DNA or blood type or whatever it is would match Chris's, I have no idea. but somehow he got bone marrow from I think it was another male in Germany. And so when you have something like that done, I have no experience in that area. Every 3 months or something, you have to go in and get your blood checked. That would make, of course, a lot of sense after this transplant has been done. Well, what is happening with Chris Long, what has happened is that his DNA has changed. The DNA that he was born with has been taken over by the DNA of the bone marrow transplant. So now when they like swab his mouth and do DNA, it is actually the DNA of the contributor, the donor, and not of Chris himself. And it is it's very interesting. You have to read the article. There's several articles out there now about this. And what I was reading is the only areas of his body that have not been affected by this, that still hold his own DNA, at least at this point, are his chest and head hair. That's it. Everything else, all the other places in his body have been, I don't know if you want to call it contaminated by the donor's DNA. Where to the point that Chris Long's sperm, when it is tested, it is now totally the donor's DNA in the sperm. So, but it's Chris has had a vasectomy, so I guess he's not going to be having any kids anymore. But should he get a reversal or something, and his sperm would be used, the baby would have all of the features of the donor and not of Chris. Crazy. It's just crazy. Crazy. Let me read some things. Velma, can I repeat the website for the shirts? I certainly can. It is unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. And if you're looking for a particular shirt, there's a little search button there, and you just type up in there and hit the search button, and it'll find the one that you're looking for. Paula, I will come back to your question about the think tank. And Cherie's talking about the confession of a killer. What are you talking about, Cherie, tonight? We have all these good topics, and you're bringing up a TV show. What are you doing? Kim says, I know corruption is our second language, but what does the U.S. not have consequences when cops obviously drop the ball? In some of your cases, it seems so obvious who is guilty, yet he or she is still free. Well, Kim, I'm not an expert on South African justice or police work. I don't know that. There's a lot of things going on when you see that. First of all, we've gotten to the point in the United States where prosecutors never want to lose any cases because they want to be seen as batting, 100%. And so they're very hesitant to take non-slam dunk cases to trial. Okay, that's part of it. Another part of it is that we also have what is called the CSI effect. And, I really dislike it. This is why I do not like the fiction crime shows that are on TV, because I realize that it does not show a fair representation of how crimes are really solved. It gives the public a distorted view of what it takes and how everything works to catch somebody. Okay? And that also frustrates prosecutors because, frankly, people get into the jury box and they suddenly, because they watch CSI and all these other crime shows, they actually think that they're smarter than the prosecutors, investigators, and everybody else. That kind of attitude doesn't help anybody. It really only helps the offender, the perpetrator, the murderer, the rapist, and everything else. It doesn't help the justice system. So there's that. Kim, the other thing, at least in the United States, is that, of course, we do have an idea that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And frankly, just in the United States, you can't do a lot of things that you can do in other countries as far as collection of evidence, etc. That's part of it. And on top of everything else, from a PR standpoint, law enforcement in the United States is all about solving the case right now, today. Today. Not yesterday's case, today's case. And so, if a lot of crimes are not solved in a certain period of time, they usually go unsolved for a long time. So there's my speech on that for that. But getting back to Chris Long, he is now known as a chimera, Chimera, and that is an organism that of any time, not just a human, but any kind of organism that has 2 or more sets of DNA in its makeup. Chris Long has not been affected by this in any way. In fact, there was a doctor who said that his brain and personality should remain the same. I think that word should is very funny in that sentence. Because I am sure that would be something that people would worry about. His family. Is this foreign DNA is taking over his body? Is he going to wake up one day and not know us? You're going to feel differently. He's going to act differently. And so far, the belief is no. But these cases are very, very rare. So not a lot of conclusions can be you can't really come to anything that really can be relied upon when you have so few cases like this. But science currently is looking for more people like this, so they can do more studies into this, and I find it fascinating. Karen says that DNA story blew my mind. Crazy is what Screaming Skull Saloon says. I love that name. Full Metal says that's crazy. Michelle says that's crazy, but makes sense on DNA. Kathy says, amazing about the DNA story. I am in remission from chronic leukemia, but have not had a bone marrow transplant. Well, Kathy, if you get a bone marrow transplant, I guess this has a possibility of happening. I think one of the other points is this isn't what happens with most bone marrow transplant people. This is not what usually happens. It just happened in this particular case. That's what makes studying it so difficult. But Kathy, you're perfect the way you are. Don't ever change. I'm talking about corruption, Ed. Well, okay. Okay. Okay, Sheree. Hey, Amanda, do you ever follow cases on the Innocent Project? I do not. No time to do that, Amanda. And evidence that the Rangers were involved in corruption. Emily, Kathy, congrats on the remission. I have a bone marrow transplant 20 years ago. Well, Emily, maybe, then of course you know what I'm talking about. Emily, I'm going to take for granted that then your DNA did not change. If you can say, I mean, I think we'd all be fascinated to know, but it's your medical history that, of course, is private to you. My mom gave her marrow to a teenager recipient 10 years ago. Maybe I will have a new sibling. Sheree, I guess it's possible. Now that I'm reading about this, I'm certainly fascinated by it. And I'd certainly love to hear the stories of people who had bone marrow transplants, and maybe their DNA didn't change to the extent that Chris's did, but it just a little bit of change. And I wonder if mentally they even realized it. That would be a very interesting topic, I think. Now you should know, when it first came out, I posted that story in the group and I said, well, it seems like this would make a, really good, novel crime fiction book, being that DNA seems to be involved in um, all sorts of cases today. Of course, we don't talk DNA very much on Unfound, but murder cases. I think that this would be a good basis for some sort of plot for a novel. Now, you're probably wondering, uh, has this ever happened? Has this kind of situation ever happened in crime in real life? And it has. In one of the articles that I read, um, it's a case from Alaska in 2004 where a crime was committed, DNA was found at the scene, and the DNA matched a guy who was in prison at the time. And what they found out that he had been a donor for his brother, not a biological brother, but not a twin. He had been a donor for his brother for something, and his brother was the one who committed the crime, but the DNA he left behind was of his brother, the donor, who was in prison and of course had a perfect alibi for the crime. Amazing. Just really, really crazy. Now, of course, in this instance, I guess it was a little easy to solve, being that it was a connection of brothers. But imagine if this guy who was in prison here donated to some stranger and wasn't in Alaska, but in Florida. I think that type of case, of course, would be very, very difficult, depending on all the circumstances, but probably be a lot more difficult to solve than this one. Emily says, Emily, who is not my assistant, Emily, Leigh at the end, says that her DNA did have some change. My brother was my donor, so when you look at my blood, it looks like I'm a male. Wow. And Emily, do you notice that? If you can say. Kathy, makes sense, Emily. Full Metal Emily, that's so crazy. Joyce, dang, I'm going to research this transplant news. Yeah, you got to do that, Joyce. And it's great seeing you here tonight, Joyce. I know you've had a lot of things going on, and I'd certainly like to talk to you again very soon. Maybe this weekend or something, Joyce. Emily says, my personality didn't change, but I did get some of my brother's minor health issues. Allergies to certain things, low vitamin B issues. Wow. Emily, it's just so interesting. So interesting. What a crazy thing. Okay, but it does seem overall, though, that Chris Long still seems to be in good shape. It doesn't seem that the people who know him best have noticed any changes in him. But he now has the DNA of a German and not of an American. No. Okay. Interesting story. Had to talk about it. That's really all I have. Let's just go to Emily says, happy to share my story. Ask any questions you want. Full Metal. Wow, how interesting. Okay, Joyce, maybe we can make some plans to talk this weekend. That'd be cool. Okay, let me put that on my agenda. This Friday, I decided to go back, being that the interview for this week fell through and flaked. I decided to go back and redo the Aundria Bowman episode. I thought this was important to do because Dennis Bowman, just within the last few weeks, the main suspect in Aundria Bowman's disappearance, has now been charged with the murder of Kathy Boyle in Virginia in 1980. And so this is opening up Aundria Bowman's disappearance again. It's getting a lot of national attention. I think that Kathy did an interview with Inside Edition. So I thought, well, let's go back. Let me listen to the interview again. Let me pump up the audio a little bit, see what I can do there. Put the new music at the beginning instead of the old music I used to use when Unfound started. And do a little bit different intro and everything else, and then a news summary at the end. But the interview portion is still the interview I did with Kathy back in November of 2016. So, what's interesting in going back and listening, you're going to hear this, is that in the interview that we do, Kathy mentions a murder in 1980 in which Dennis could be the suspect. She does not mention the murdered person's name, though. But during the interview, she mentions this murder that now we know is Kathleen Doyle. I find that, little did we know that back when she mentioned that 3 years later, almost to the day, Dennis would be charged with that murder in 1980. Now, you should also know that Kathy in the interview also mentions a woman who was murdered right after Dennis got out of jail as well, and I don't believe that that case is solved. I'm guessing that they're going to try to connect him to that too. But given that Aundria's disappearance, and you should know that when she was born until she was adopted, her first name was Alexis, Alexis. Being that it's gotten so much national news, I thought that being that I did what I think is the most complete interview that Kathy has done, I thought that, bring more back attention to the case, let everybody get to hear what Kathy said 3 years ago when it didn't seem like, Dennis Bowman would ever be charged with anything. And now here he is just 3 years later, once again, almost to the day that the episode came out. The episode came out on November 16th, 2016. He got charged with Kathleen's murder on November 22nd, 2019. So a year and 6 days later, or 3 years and 6 days later. Weird how that works. But I have talked to Kathy a little bit. She does know that this Friday I'm going to reissue this episode. And I have to tell you, probably this is going to be a theme in 2020 because, I'm starting to realize that a lot of people, find Unfound for the first time. And, I don't know if they totally, go back to the beginning to listen to the beginning. So I'm doing that, and it also gives me an opportunity to write on the Patreon blog about some of these older disappearances because I didn't start writing the Patreon blog until like September of 2017. So there's virtually a year of cases that I haven't gotten to write about and give my really in-depth, analysis. Of course, I do that in the books, but some people don't get the books. I wish everybody would have the books, but this gives me an opportunity to go back and write some, like with Regina Marie Boss. Same thing when we did that a couple months ago for the Squeaky Will tour. That gave me an opportunity to write about Regina Marie Boss's case on the blog. And of course, if you're interested in Aundria Bowman's The Complete Interview in a transcript and everything, Aundria's case is in Season 1, Volume 2 of the Unfound book series. And, speaking of all of that, being that my dad is here, I'm not going to be able to get a lot of extra work done while he's here. So, books and those things are going to be put on the back burner until February. However, in the meantime, maybe this will give me an opportunity to get some more transcriptions started. Now, there's an idea. So, there's that. So that's this Friday, a reissuing of the Aundria Bowman episode, and I hope to have a new case for next Friday, and I think then the Friday after that, I'm going to do an update episode, another update episode, which should be, I'm going to guess it's going to be 3 hours long or something because there's a lot to talk about. That's all I got for tonight. Went about an hour because we got started 15 minutes late because of technical issues, but I think once we got up started here, I think everything went fine. Thank you. Let me see if. Oh yeah, Paula, you asked me a question. Let me see if I can answer it here. Paula, when you take comments, questions, insight back to guests from the think tank, do they ever get offended or defensive about anything? No, that's not happened, Paula. Um, I always set it up from day one, Paula, that they're always going to get the truth from me. I'm not going to say anything to any of my guests just to make them feel good. All right, that doesn't help anybody. It may make them feel good, but because it's the truth, not because I'm necessarily trying to brighten their day through falsehoods. So no. Is that to mean that the guests automatically agree with everything that we've talked about in a think tank? No, no, not at all. But no, these guests, I think they're open to. I think they want any kind of help that they can get, even if sometimes they think that opinions that they're being given aren't necessarily true. So nobody's got offended or defensive or anything like that, Paula. It never, has come to that, and I think really because, I think by that time they know that I'm just a brutally honest type of guy anyway. When it comes to these cases, that uh, the goal is to solve them, and I think the only way you can do that is by being brutally honest about everything that's going on. So no, I wouldn't say anybody's been offended or defensive or anything. Nah, I don't think so. Nothing that pops out right now. Nothing that really jumps out at me, Paula. Um, so there you go. That's all I got for tonight. Carrie says I feel the family's really open to suggestions and opinions. That's true. But I'm gonna go. It's been an hour. Like I said, couldn't put a lot together tonight due to the last couple days and everything. But I'm glad I got to talk about that DNA story. So that's all I have. Thank you for being patient and being that the show got started about 15 minutes late. Thank you for being patient. I wasn't trying to pull a Madonna or a Diana Ross or any of those uh, people or artists or musicians who are known for making their audience wait for hours and hours and hours. I wasn't trying to do that. It was a real technical issue. But I'm going to go now. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Cherie, thank you for managing and monitoring tonight, as always, and moderating. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.